the Royal Irish Regiment. Until 1881, the 18th Regiment of Foot was an infantry regiment of the line in the British Army, first raised in 1684. Also known as the 18th Regiment of Foot and the 18th Regiment of Foot, it was one of 8 Irish regiments raised largely in Ireland. Its home depot in Clonmel. It saw service for 2.5 centuries before being disbanded with the partition of Ireland following establishment of the independent Irish Free State in 1922, when the 5 regiments that had their traditional recruiting grounds in the counties of the new state were disbanded. Formation. The regiment was formed in 1684 by the Earl of Granard from independent companies in Ireland. In 1695, the regiment became known as the Royal Regiment of Ireland due to its performance at Namur under the direction of King William III. The regiment also won the right to display the King's arms on their colours along with the harp and crown. The regiment served throughout the turn of the 18th century in continental battles before being sent to Gibraltar. In 1751, the regiment was officially ranked as the 18th Regiment of Foot, although it was older than all but 6 other line regiments. It had not been placed on the English establishment until 1689, lowering its precedence. 7 Years' War and American Revolution. The regiment was in Ireland during the majority of the 7 Years' War and was ordered to America on 1 January 1767. The regiment arrived at Philadelphia on the 11th of July 1767 under the command of Lieutenant Colonel John Wilkins. The regiment remained at Philadelphia, although a small detachment was sent to F.D. Pitt later that summer. The majority of the regiment under Wilkins was ordered to Illinois in early 1768 and remained in Illinois until April 1772, when Fort Chartres was abandoned. A small detachment under Captain Hugh Lord remained at F.D. Gage, Illinois until May 1776, when it was ordered to Detroit in anticipation of an American attack on that post. The rest of the regiment was present in Boston, where the Grenadier Company participated in the Battle of Lexington and Battle of Concord and Bunker Hill, its first formal combat in more than 50 years. The regiment was drafted into other regiments in Boston in December 1775 and at Detroit in July 1776. According to Cannon's regimental history, the losses at Lexington, Concord were 2 killed, 4 wounded, p. 48, and at Bunker Hill 3 rank-and-file killed, while L.T. Richardson and 7 rank-and-file were wounded, p. 49. A detachment of the Royal Irish along with a detachment of the Royal Fencible Americans were sent to Penobscot, Maine to cut wood for the garrison in the early fall 1775. The 8 companies at Boston were drafted in December 1775. Lord's detachment was drafted into the 8th Regiment in July 1776 at Detroit. French Revolutionary Wars. In 1783 there was a mutiny by 500, mainly Irish soldiers in the 104th Regiment, based at Fort George. Both the 18th Regiment and the Guernsey Militia turned out with 6 pieces of artillery. Volleys of shots were fired by the rebels, but where the militia outflanking the rebels, they surrendered. The government of Guernsey gave a public thanks to the 18th and militiamen, awarding them 100 guineas. The Royal Irish returned to Gibraltar in 1783, where they remained until the Siege of Toulon in 1793. 2nd Battalion. The 2nd Battalion, originally raised for the French wars and disbanded on Jersey on 24 October 1814, was reformed on 18 September 1857 for the New Zealand Wars, mainly from volunteers from the Irish militia. They began to arrive in New Zealand from 4 July 1863. They served in the Waikato and Taranaki campaigns of the New Zealand Wars. Captain Hugh Shaw won the VC when he rescued wounded soldiers during a skirmish at Nukamaru near Wanganui. The battalion was the last Imperial Army unit to leave New Zealand in February 1870. The battalion moved from Fermoy to Buttevant in Cork in 1906, where it is recorded on 14 September On 16 October 1908 it was to be found at Blackdown near the Limerick Road outside Dublin. In 1910 Major General J. Burton Forster, who had commanded the battalion between December 1897 and February 1901, presented it with a set of Brian Boru bagpipes. In the same year the battalion moved to Guernsey. On 31 March 1913 the band of the 2nd Battalion performed in St. Paul's Cathedral at the funeral of Viscount Wolseley, the first Colonel-in-Chief of the regiment. In the same year the battalion was moved to Devonport, and on the outbreak of the First World War to Flanders as part of the 3rd Division. The Royal Irish Regiment was committed in the First Battle of Ypres as part of 2nd Corps under General Horace Smith-Dorrien, where at La Pille on 20 October 1914 the 2nd Battalion was cut off and obliged to surrender. The battalion was reformed. By March 1915 it was part of the 4th Division. By May 1916 the battalion was part of the 7th Division. It was involved in the Battle of the Somme in that year. By October 1916 it was part of the 16th Division, and by April 1918 the 63rd Division. On Armistice Day the battalion was at Spines near Mons in Belgium. On 27 November 1918 the battalion is recorded at Blair-Egnies a few miles further south, and on 12 December at Frameries in the same area. On 13 January 1919 the battalion was reunited there with its band. By 7 May 1919 it had narrowly escaped being sent to northern Russia. Instead it returned to Britain and was stationed at Rugeley Camp in Staffordshire. Then by 14 May at Rusborough Barracks in Folkestone, and by 23 October at Purfleet by the Raynham Marshes in Essex. Between 13 February and 26 March 1920 the battalion was at sea on its way to Chakrata and Dehradun in the Himalayan foothills not far to the southeast of Simla, with a detachment at Ambala down in the plain on the River Tangri. By 19 October 1920 the battalion was in Delhi, and then returned to the Chakrata area, where it is recorded 16 April and 29 December 1921, and on 2 February and 4 March 1922. On 26 March it embarked for Portsmouth, where it arrived on 2 May. On 31 July 1922 it was disbanded at its home base. Like the 4 other regiments of the British Army whose traditional recruiting grounds lay in the new Irish Free State. Renaming. In 1881 as part of the Childers reforms the regiment became the Royal Irish Regiment, and served as the county regiment of Tipperary, Waterford, Wexford and Kilkenny. Its garrison depot was at Clonmel. Militarily, the whole of Ireland was administered as a separate command within the United Kingdom, with command headquarters at Parkgate, Dublin, directly under the War Office in London. The regiment provided the Guard of Honour during the visit of the King to Kilkenny on 29 April 1904. Boer War. The regiment participated in the Boer War, First World War. In the First World War, 7 further battalions were raised: 5th Battalion, 1914 to 1919, 3 battalions, including a mounted unit, the 7th Battalion, for the front, and 3 garrison battalions, the 5th Battalion and the Regular Army 1st Battalion, and were part of the 10th Division. The 6th Battalion, Volunteers following Kitchener's new army appeal, was part of the 16th Division. The regiment was one of the 6 disbanded under the terms of the Anglo-Irish Treaty after the establishment of the Irish Free State in 1922. Easter Rising 1916. The Royal Irish Regiment, made up in the vast majority of local Dubliners, and were the first British Army troops to attack the Irish rebels during the 1916 Easter Rising, who were fighting to end British rule in Ireland and to establish the Irish Republic in Dublin. 8 of the Royal Irish Regiment were killed and 16 more wounded. Some of these are buried in Grange Gorman Military Cemetery. A Royal Irish Regiment officer reported that they regarded, not unreasonably, everyone they saw as an enemy, and fired at anything that moved. Disbandment. Due to substantial defence cuts and the establishment of the Irish Free State in 1922, it was agreed that the 6 former Southern Ireland regiments would be disbanded, including the Royal Irish Regiment. On 12 June, 5 regimental colours were laid up in a ceremony at St George's Hall, Windsor Castle in the presence of H.M. King George V. The 6 regiments were then all disbanded on 31 July 1922. With the simultaneous outbreak of the Irish Civil War conflict, some thousands of their ex-servicemen and officers contributed to expanding the Free State government's newly formed National Army. They brought considerable combat experience with them and by May 1923 comprised 50% of its 53,000 soldiers and 20% of its officers. Battle Honours: Namur 1695, Blenheim, Ramillies, Oudenarde, Malplaquet, Egypt, China, Pegu, Sevastopol, New Zealand, Afghanistan, Tel El-Kabir, Egypt 1882, Nile, South Africa. The Great War: Mons, Le Cateau, Retreat from Mons, Marne 1914, Aisne 1914, La Bassée 1914, Ypres 1915, 17, 18, Gravenstaffel, St. Julien, Fresenberg, Bellewaerde, Somme 1916, 18, Albert 1916, 18, Bazenton, Delville Wood, Guillemont, Ginchy, Messines 1917, Pilcombe, Longwy Mark 1917, St. Quentin, Rosiers, Arras 1918, Drocourt Quéant, Hindenburg Line, Canal du Nord, St. Quentin Canal, Beaurevoir, Cambrai 1918, Courtrai, France and Flanders 1914–18, Struma, Macedonia 1915–17, Suvla, landing at Suvla, Gallipoli 1915, Gaza, Jerusalem, Tel Asur, Megiddo, Nablus, Palestine 1917–18. Victoria Crosses. The following members of the regiment were awarded the Victoria Cross: Captain Thomas Esmond, Crimean War; Captain Hugh Shaw, New Zealand Land Wars; Private John Barry, Second Boer War; Private Frederick George Room, Great War. Great War Memorials: Irish National War Memorial Gardens, Dublin; Island of Ireland Peace Park, Messines, Belgium; Ulster Tower Memorial, Thiepval, France; Menengate Memorial, Ypres, Belgium; Colonels 1684–1686, Arthur Forbes, Earl of Granard; 1686–1688, Arthur, Lord Forbes; 1688–1689, Colonel Sir John Edgeworth; 1689–1692, Edward Brabazon, Earl of Meath; 1692–1705, Major General Frederick Hamilton; 1705–1712, Lieutenant General Richard Ingoldsby; 1712–1717, Brigadier General Robert Stearns; 1717–1732, Brigadier General William Cosby; 1732–1735, Sir Charles Hutham, Bart; 1735–1742, Major General John Armstrong; 1742–1747, General Sir John Mordaunt KB; 1747–1762, Lieutenant General John Folliot; 1762–1794, Sir James Saunders Seabright; 1794–1811, Sir James Pulteney, 7th BT; 1811–1832, General John Helly Hutchinson, Earl of Donoughmore KB; 1832–1850, General Matthew Aylmer GCB; 1850–1877, Field Marshal Sir John Forster Fitzgerald GCB; 1877–1882, Lieutenant General Clement Alexander Edwards CB; 1882–1886, General Sir Alexander MacDonnell KCB; 1886–1889, General Sir Richard Dennis Kelly KCB; 1889–1895, General George Frederick Stephenson Call CB; 1895, Lieutenant General Walter MacLeod Fraser; 1895 to 1897, Lieutenant General Sir Henry Marshman Havelock Allen, Bart. V.C., GCB. 1897 to 1918, Major General Charles Frederick Gregory, C.B. 1918 to 1922, Major General John Burton Forster, C.B.